Hello everybody, welcome aboard. It's good to see you. Although not really seeing you. If you're watching this as this video's been released, I'm on vacation. I missed my live stream yesterday because I'm simply not around. But I wanted to get a video out the door and take an opportunity to show off I guess not a new product, but something that's been significantly updated. This is going to be the 727 version 2, and I believe they're calling this one Study. This is made by FlyJSim. I flew this a couple weeks ago on the stream, and we'll say that I had a ton of fun with it. This was one of the very first planes that I flew in X-Plane, and as I've mentioned in other videos, this is sort of what got me on the map with a number of other prominent streamers and YouTubers. And I was very, very excited when I heard that Jack was going to be working on a version 2 of this plane, and I will say I'm super, super, super stoked now that this thing is out the door, and everybody has a chance to mess with it. So we have today a nice short flight that's planned. We're going to be flying LaGuardia up to Boston. We'll take a look at the Drzewiecki, New York airports and Drzewiecki, New York City scenery, which is what we're looking at right now. And then once we get up to Boston, we'll have a chance to take a look at the brand new Mr. X scenery from Boston. That has been featured in another video, and we didn't actually do a proper flight into the city. So that's sort of what's going to happen here. We're doing the flight offline today. Not doing any AI, and just sort of cruising and having a good time. As we jump into the cockpit here, you're going to notice quite a few changes over the previous versions of this plane. Number one, the texturing is definitely better. I know that FlyJSim has put some work into improving the overall appearance of this plane, and it definitely shows. One of the other things is, as we start looking at some of these other panels, you're going to notice a few more things that have been added. There's a few more panels here and there. There's a few more knobs and a few more switches, and I think most of them actually do work and probably do stuff. We're not necessarily going to take a look at them today because I'm not brave enough to start flipping switches that I don't know anything about. But there's definitely some new stuff for you to learn and some new stuff for you to play with. And of course, with the 727, one of the most charming and one of the things that really sticks out the most about this plane is this engineer's panel that we have. And this panel, I think a lot of people find daunting and a lot of people find intimidating. But in reality, it's just a less condensed version of the overhead panel and some of the knobs and switches that we have in the 737. So the goal today is to show you how I fly this plane. There will be variations on things that are done. Some people will flip switches in different orders. Some people will do things a little differently. And maybe I'm doing things wrong altogether in some cases. But this is what I feel it takes for me to get up in the air and for me to be able to enjoy this plane. And then we'll go ahead and pop into the options menu here. So one of the new changes with this plane is that it comes with a 3D version of XFMC. We'll look at that down here. This is a nice little 3D interface into the freeware FMS known as XFMC. It is a pretty capable product that's able to give us SIDS and star supports. Fairly basic when it comes to some of the other functionality that you would expect from an FMC, but it will allow us to fly some proper RNAV arrivals and flight plans, which is what we're going to have to do today, heading up to Boston. I had attempted earlier to turn on the ground power and the air cart, and it crashed my sim. So they're here. They do work. I've used them before, but we're not going to use them today. I actually was recording this just a few minutes ago. As soon as I pushed those buttons, sim was gone. So I'm not sure if that was the cause or not, but we'll just leave those suckers off. So what we want to do is we want to start getting this sucker turned on. So I'm going to make sure that our parking brake is engaged by pulling it out, and there it is. We'll come back here to the engineer's panel, move to the overhead panel, and we'll turn on the batteries. With the battery on, we can go ahead and pop over to the APU panel. We're going to press and hold the start switch until we start to see the EGT rise here. We'll also hear the APU start to come alive, move it back to the on position, and we'll give it a chance here to start firing up. Now with the APU online, we should be able to close both of the circuit switches up here, and we'll start to hear this thing come to life. A little bit of power being drawn. We got our overhead fans online. That's good. So we'll pop on back here to the engineer's panel, and we will close each of the generator ties here. Get rid of all of our lights. Treat this a little bit like an Airbus, I guess, in this regard. Go ahead and make sure the galley power is galley power can come on for the time being. And we will open up on the bleed panel here. We'll open up engine 2. We'll open up the APU bleed. We'll start to see the PSI come alive there. And we can also turn on both of the packs. And we'll start to see the PSI not come alive. Gas per fan can come on. We'll start getting some airflow back there. And moving on down, our altitude today is going to be 19,000 feet. It will be landing at sea level, so we'll leave that where it's at. And we'll leave the flight ground switch over on ground for the time being. So that takes care of our upper engineers panel. Down to the lower engineer panel, we'll turn on all the fuel pumps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We will turn on both of the hydraulics here and both of the hydraulics here. Get our engine pumps and then get our electric pumps on. And we'll start to see the hydraulic system pressurize, which is fantastic. And some lights will come out, which means that we've got hydraulic pressure. We can move back to the front of the plane and the overhead panel, and we'll start looking at what we got up here. On the left side, all of these switches are in a state for which we would like them to be. On the second panel, test that, make sure it works, because why the hell not? Flight recorder works. Compass, I don't know, compass is doing compass things. These guys are all where we want them. Auto brakes will leave disarmed for the time being. Third panel, we're going to go ahead and arm the emergency exit lights by popping that sucker down right there. Fourth panel, the engine start switches are both in the off position. That's where we want them to be for now. Alternate flaps we're not worried about. This compass we're not worried about. And we're not worried about any of the other stuff except for the no smoking sign over here. We'll go ahead and turn on our transponder. We'll leave it on 2000. We're flying offline, so it doesn't actually matter what we put in there. But then we will move to the last panel, and we'll go window heats 1, 2, 3, and 4 on. We'll leave the wing and pitot static heat and all the anti-ice systems in the off position. So we got people in, we got gas in, we got the plane in a position where it's essentially ready to start up, and we can verify that by pulling up a checklist. So if we were to go through the before start checklist, we'd want to make sure the battery's on, which it is. APU or ground power. Well, we have the APU on, so that's fantastic. We checked the stall warning. The emergency exit lights are armed. Passenger signs, we'll go ahead and turn all the passenger signs on now, because we'll be getting out of here in just a few minutes. Window heats are all on. Radio and transponders have been set. Parking brake is currently set. We went through the APU start procedure already, so we're not worried about that. And then we'll come back to this checklist here once we get to the engine start procedure time point of our show thingy something or other. But for now, let's go ahead and pop down to the FMC, and we'll start doing things down here. Today's flight is actually going to be relatively easy to punch in because there's like one waypoint and 2 airports. And that's pretty much it. So we hit the FMC button back there. We'll go ahead and hit the position in it. We're at KLGA. KLGA. Punch that in right there. Onto the route page. We're going from KLGA up to KBOS. And we are going to a, I don't know, we're going to leave all that stuff alone. Push the activate button. It's not actually doing anything. Pretend we didn't see that. We will head over to the route page, though. We'll put our only via. So we're going to take the Merritt. We're going to be, I should say, we're going to be flying direct to the Merritt intersection and then on the Roebuck 2 arrival. So we'll punch in Merritt right here, M-E-R-I-T. Right there, like so. Head on over to the departure and arrival page from LaGuardia. We'll be taking off on runway. Let's see here. The winds at LaGuardia right now are 070 at 10, so we'll plan for runway 4. Execute that. And back to the departure and arrival page, coming into Boston. We're coming in on the ILS runway 4 right, and we're going to be coming in on the Roebuck 2 arrival from Merritt. So Roebuck 2 from Merritt. So this caught me up a little bit here. You have to punch in the approach, hit exec, and then you can punch in the star and hit exec. And that should, oh yeah, and then we're going to come from the Winnie transition, nav type ILS, punch that in right there. So if we were to go ahead and cross-check this against our charts, we would want to see that we have Merritt, followed by Ruse, followed by All-In, and then Banky, Roebuck, Provi. That's going to be on the next page. And then we got Judy, Sophie, Ernie, Goshi, Winnie, Nabo, Milt. Well, actually, once we get to Winnie, we're on the approach, so we'll worry about that once we get up there. So it looks like that's got the that's going to have the approach plugged in there for us. That's good. Now, there's not really... I think there's some other stuff that we can do on here, but to be perfectly honest, like all the performance data and whatnot, it doesn't really matter with this plane. So we're not going to mess around with any of the other stuff. We're just going to use the FMC purely as a navigation device. I'm sure that there's more stuff that you can do with this, but it's simply not something that I'm overly concerned with for this for this particular flight. So let's talk briefly about this departure that we're going to run. We're going to run direct off of runway 4, and we'll be following the LaGuardia 5 departure. LaGuardia 5 departure says fly heading 044 until crossing 600 feet, and then make a right turn to heading 055. So to punch that in, what we're going to do is I'm actually going to set my course knob to 044, the initial heading that we're going to follow, because it's going to be a very short time that we'll be following that. And then I'm going to set my heading knob to 055. And that's going to be right there. So that's then, what we're going to do is we'll follow the course knob until we reach 600 feet, and then we're going to make a right turn to 055. Now, normally there'd be a clearance as to how high you can actually go on these. Since we're not under control today, we're just going to set our initial altitude all the way up to 19,000 feet. That's going to be our final altitude as well. And if we wanted to finish up this front panel here, we'd want to punch in our altimeter setting, which is 2984 right now in LaGuardia. 2984. So we popped the overhead panel here, and we press the ground crew call button. What's going to happen is we're going to get a little pushback dialog that'll come up. We want to push it back in auto mode. And normally we'd have the distance, the tail, and all this stuff. We'd say, well, what the hell does any of that mean? But we can pop to the outside of the plane, push the show ghost button right here, and it's actually going to give us a ghost showing where we're going to push this plane back to. So what we want to do is aim for as close to that taxi line as we possibly can. So we'll go ahead and bring it in. And that looks like it's pretty close to me. So we're going to go 60 meters back. The tail's going to go to the left, which I think the directions here may be a little confused. We're going to turn it 90 degrees, and we're going to show our ghost here to show how far back we're going. So I will come in here, press the auto button, disengage the parking brake, and then press the auto button, and we'll start pushing back. So while the pushback is happening there, we'll pop up nope, that's not the checklist. We'll pop up the checklist here, and we'll start running through our engine start checklist. So we're going to want the nav lights and the beacon both on. We're going to want the galley power to come off. That's going to be 1 and 2 right there. We're going to want the packs off. That's going to be 1 and 2 right there. Verify that we have at least 30 PSI. We've got about 35 to 40 PSI, so that's sufficient. And that the engine bleed valves are open. So 1, 2, and 3. To start the engine, we're going to put the switch to ground, wait for N2 to rise to 20%. Engine start valve to on. We can start the next engine. Engine oil pressure. We can start the next engine when the engine oil pressure light goes out. So, while the pushback is still going on, we'll pop the overhead panel here. We're going to start these engines 2, 3, and then 1. So if we start with engine number 1, pop that up here. Pop that sucker down to the ground switch. You'll hear a very familiar FlyJSim sound there, which is this engine firing up. We're going to keep an eye on this N2 value right here. Wait until he gets to be 20%, which is about right there, and then we're going to add gas to engine number 2. Keep an eye on the engine exhaust temperature. Keep an eye on the N1 as it starts to rise. And everything, fuel flow should come up, and everything else should start to come up. And we'll know that this engine has been lit when we see that light right there go out in the middle. There, the light has gone out. We've also finished our pushback, so we'll go ahead and re-engage our parking brake to make sure we don't start sliding away. And we'll do the same procedure now for engines number 3 and number 1. Now that we're sitting here with 3 good engines, we'll go ahead and run through our after start flows. We pop over to the overhead panel here. We want to make sure the first panel looks good, the second panel looks good, the third panel looks good. There wasn't really a whole lot going on with those. All of our engine starts are closed. That's good. Both our no smoking and fasten seatbelt signs are on. That's also good. Window heats are currently on because we turned them on. We're going to leave all the wing anti-ice off, but we will turn on the probe and static heater, or the probe heaters, I should say, left and right. We'll turn on the taxi lights by pushing that guy right there. We'll bring on both the runway turn-off lights. Strobe can stay off, nav on, beacon on, wing light can come on, logo light on. Overhead panel's good right there. We'll pop back here to the engineer panel, move up here to the top. We're going to go ahead and shut off APU bleed and engine 2 bleed. We'll turn on both the packs, 1 and 2. And we should start to see some stuff happen here with the packs. Yep, the packs have pressure, so they're good to go. Let's see a little bit of goofiness there with the pressure when we tried to turn these center bleeds off, but that's all right. We'll pretend we didn't see it. We'll change our pressurization panel over to flight, and that'll start to get us pressurized here as we head up. We can turn our galley powers back on, 1 and 2. That looks good there. Lower panel, there's really not much to worry about here except to make sure that everything is in the green. So we should have oil pressure and oil temps in the green. We should have hydraulic pressure coming from both our electric and our engine pumps, which we do. And we can go ahead and move back here and turn off our APU. So grab that guy, turn him off. We'll start to see that, I guess, the opposite of whatever come to life is. We'll start to see that do its thing. So now that all of our panels are in a good state, let's get our speeds, bugs, and all that good stuff set for our departure. We're going to be departing with flaps 50 15, I think, is going to be a good number that we'll use today. Flaps 15 is going to have a V1 of 122, a V rotate of 122, and a V2 of 134. So we're going to be aiming to climb out between 134 and about 154 knots. That's going to be about where that marker is right there. We have a marker here that shows our V1 and our V rotate speeds, and we'll also get a call out at 80 knots as we're blasting out of here. We're going to plan on setting our engine power to 97% for takeoff, and as soon as we're off the ground and safely leaving, we'll go back to 92%. And as we mentioned before, on departure, we're going to fly heading 044 until 600 feet, and we'll make a right turn to 055. As we approach the runway here, we'll run through our before takeoff checklists. Anti-ice is set. Pitot heat is on. Flight instruments are set for departure. Flight controls have been checked. Speed brake is down. Stabilizer trim is set for takeoff. Flaps are set for 15. Galley power is on. Electrical, no lights are on. Fuel heat is off. Hydraulic pressure is normal, and quantity is normal. APU is off. Flight and ground switch is set for flight. Number 2 bleeds have been closed, and the airspeed bugs and the EPR bugs have been set. That is the before takeoff checklist. We'll also move on to the cleared for takeoff checklist, since this is going to be a pretty quick departure out of here. Start switches have been guarded. Transponder is on altitude. Landing lights are on. 2, 3, 4. Autopack trip switch is normal and cut out, and that is the before cleared for takeoff checklist, I suppose. So let's go ahead and get out of here. Start to advance the throttles here. Make sure our engines are stable, which they are. Power set. Airspeed's alive. 80. V1 V rotate. Positive rate gears coming up. .600 feet, right turn 0455. Punch the nose down a little bit here, pull the power back to 92%. Bring the trim down. Start bringing the flaps in. for about a 500 feet per minute climb rate and 055 on the heading. Goal is to accelerate ourselves to 250 knots. Set the flight director for heading, turn the flight, turn the flight director on. We'll go ahead and engage the autopilot. The autopilot on, we'll go ahead and nose ourselves down a little bit here. We're going for 250 knots. As we get to 250 knots, we'll move to our center panel. And we will turn ourselves to IAS hold. That's going to keep us at 250 knots as we climb our way out of here. Taxi, runway turn off, wing. So now that we're clear of that, we'll do an after takeoff checklist. Seatbelt switch is off and on. I guess we'll let them know. Anti-ice close, gears up and off. Flaps are up, no lights. Auto pack trip to cutout. I assume that's okay. Hydraulic pressure, quantity normal, pressure normal. And pressurization is checked and set. That is our after takeoff. So what we need to do is set ourselves direct to the Merritt intersection. And I think I know how to do that. This thing's gets a little weird sometimes. So we should be able to grab the Merritt intersection, put it back here at the top, and then exec that. And if we come down to the autopilot panel and we put ourselves into auxiliary nav for our nav selector, that's going to turn us, and that should turn us direct to Merritt. This is me being super confident in what's going on. We do have VOR local lights, we do have GPS lights on, and it looks like we are probably turning direct towards something that should resemble the Merritt intersection. In fact, I'm seeing on our DME that we're 37 miles out, and now we're turning on course. So now we are direct to the Merritt intersection. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy your flight, and we'll be back with you here once we get a little closer to Boston. One thing that I realized that I forgot to mention, and this is a good time to mention as we're crossing through 10,000 feet, is we need to make sure we're in alt select mode. If we don't arm alt select mode, we're not actually going to stop climbing at 19,000 feet. So we did cross 10,000 feet. We're going to nose ourselves down and get ourselves up to 290 for the climb. And we'll do that by popping back down here, going into pitch hold mode. We'll move our speed bug up to 290 knots. And using a cheater button that I have on my joystick, we're just going to go ahead and reduce the pitch just a little bit here. That's going to bring the nose down. That's going to reduce the rate of climb. And we're going to start accelerating ourselves up to 290 knots. As we start hitting 290, we'll come on down to our center panel and put our pitch selector back to IAS hold. That's going to hold 290 knots. That's going to raise the nose, and we'll start climbing again at full speed. 1,000 to go. So much for having a scenic flight. It appears though we're stuck in a nice overcast layer here. Thankfully our temperature outside is well over 0 degrees, so we don't have to worry about icing or anything like that, but yeah. It's just us and this gloomy ass airplane. But this does give us a chance to go ahead and talk about the arrival coming into Boston. So we crossed the Merritt intersection. We're on our way to Ruize, R-U-I-Z-E. We won't exactly be able to adhere to what they're asking for on the chart, but we'll be able to come pretty close to it. So what we're looking for is Ruize between 230 and 210, all in between 17,000 16,000, Roebuck between flight level 190 and 12,000, and Pravi above 11,000. We're going to plan for the Winnie transition, which has us going through Goshi. That means we're going to the bottom of our approach here is going to be Goshi at 6,000 feet. We got some speed restrictions to care about. At Roebuck, we need to be 260 knots. At Sophie, we need to be 220 knots, and at Goshi, we need to be 210 knots. We're coming up on the all-in intersection, which is above 17,000 feet. With that, we're going to go ahead and start down a little bit, see if maybe we can get out of some of this overcast layer. So we're going to set ourselves to the bottom of our approach, which is going to be 6,000 feet. Our arrival, I should say, which is going to be 6,000 feet. So we'll select altitude of 6,000. We'll come on down to the center panel here. Arm the Alt Select button. That's going to bring us out of Alt Hold. We'll pull the throttles back just a little bit here, and we're going to go ahead and descend in pitch mode. That's going to be done by moving this pitch command down a little bit. You'll note that we're going to start dipping down. Our vertical speed will start decreasing, or going negative, I should say. We'll shoot for about 1,500 to 2,000 feet per minute. And the goal is to stay above 17,000 by the time we cross All-In. Now, we're 5 miles away from All-In right now, so I don't think that that's actually going to happen. I called ahead and got the weather conditions currently at Boston. What we're looking at here is winds 090 at Niner, and the altimeter is 299.2. We're planning for the ILS 4 right approach, knowing that information. Just like magic, here we go below the overcast layer. While we're descending, I'm going to get ready for the ILS 4 right approach. The ILS 4 right approach has us crossing Winnie above 4,000 feet. Winnie happens to be the end of the arrival here, so we'll be able to connect the two directly together. Going through Nabble, Milt, Irsu, and then landing on 4 right. We're going to need to tune into 110.3 and set a course of 036. So we can do that, some of that right now, I should say. So 110.3 will punch into Nav 1 here. All right, there, like so. And then we will also tune into the Boston VOR, because we'll need that in case we have to go missed. And we'll punch that into Nav 2. That's going to be 112.7. That'll also give us a pretty good indicator as to how far we are from Boston. So what we're going to have here is currently in DME 1, we have what's coming off of the GPS, or the FMC. And then in DME 2, we have our distance from Boston, which is currently 55 miles. So we get ready for our approach here. Bring up our V-card, landing. We're going to be landing with flaps of 30. It's going to have a VREF speed of 124. Given the current wind conditions, we'll plan for an approach speed of 129 knots. As we're coming up on the wind intersection, we could probably try to pick up the localizer here. So what we'll do is we'll sync up our heading bug, pop ourselves over into heading mode. And on the ILS 4 right approach, we're looking for 036 for the course. We move towards the wind intersection, we can continue down to 4,000 feet, so we'll punch in 4K. Bring our speed back a touch here, and we'll go ahead and pitch ourselves down after disengaging Alt Select mode. You'll notice we just got movement on our localizer, so we'll go ahead and pitch the nose up a little bit here. Put our vertical speed into localizer mode, or approach mode, I should say, which is going to be Auto GS right there. The nose is going to pick itself up, and now we're going to start descending into the glide slope. Get close to the runway here. We want to go ahead and arm the auto brakes to medium, and we will arm the speed brake. We've captured the localizer, captured the glide slope on our way down. 13 miles out. Going through the descent and approach checklist, seatbelt signs are on, anti-ice is closed. Landing lights are currently on, altimeters have been set, radio altimeter is set for 200. Flight instruments have been set, hydraulic pressure and quantity are both normal. And cooling doors have been set. 7 miles out, we'll go ahead and command the gear to come down. Once the gear's down, we'll go flap 30. And gears down 3 green, flap 30. Next stop, Boston. Gears down, 3 green flaps are set. Auto brake is armed. Speed brake is armed. Run through the landing checklist here. No smoking sign on. Spoilers armed. Auto brakes are armed. Gears down and 3 green flaps are set. Landing checklist complete. Go ahead and take the autopilot off here in my aircraft. Beautiful approach coming in here into Boston. Look at that. This is why we sim. Checked. Hundred above, runways in sight. We are landing. And reversers out, spoilers out, decel. 80 knots. Manual braking. Reversers in. Now for the after landing checklist. Window heats can come off. Anti-ice can come off. Pitot heat can come off. Flaps are up. Radar transponder can... Well, we're going to leave those on. Speed brake is down. Galley power can come off. 1, 2. Flight ground switch can go to ground. APU start and on. Bring the APU online. 1, 2, 3. As we're taxiing in, that'll come up. That's the landing checklist. I'm not sure where Pan Am parks, but we're going to say they park with JetBlue guys. It looks like a JetBlue plane, so it's close enough. So we taxi in here, we'll go ahead and put the parking brake on. Come back here to the engineers panel. We got to make sure we have our APU is on. So we'll go ahead and close this guy, close this guy. That's going to put AC amps over onto the APU. and then move over to the overhead panel here. All the anti-ice is off. We can turn off the fasten seatbelt signs. We can turn off the lights, 1 and 2. And then we'll go ahead and bring off all whoops. Actually, we'll come back here. We will turn on the bleeds for engine 2 and the APU. And then we will come back to the engines and we'll go 1, 2, 3. Bring all of our engines offline. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Boston International Airport. Doesn't matter what the local time is, because you're always watching this after the fact. Take solace in knowing that if you're seeing this within a day or two of it being released, I will have already flown out of here and I'll be down on a nice tropical island. I'll miss you guys. I really do. But thank you all so much for joining me. I really do I love this 727, and the updates that Jack's done to this thing are just incredible. And let me tell you, man, this scenery here, like, find me a better looking freeware scenery in any sim. Much less, X-Plane versus FSX. Like, this is just an incredible looking scenery. And if it's not in your library, you should have it. And if this plane isn't in your hangar, you should also have it. It's been great. It's been great talking to you guys tonight. I hope you enjoyed the show. And we'll definitely see you next time. So have a great one. Toodles.